Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fixate Binge Podcast. I'm your weekly host, Joe. I'm glad you're with us. I've got some interesting things to talk to you about for this episode. If you're a parent and you've got kids that are going to be home during the summer, I think this podcast might have something useful for you. I'm going to make some recommendations about some shows that your kids can actually get involved with that I think are good shows about adventure and with interesting writing and great characters. You know, when I grew up, there wasn't as much TV on. And of course, there wasn't internet. There wasn't anything like a computer in our home or video games or anything quite like that. I know I'm a bit old here. And so we spend a lot of time outdoors. Well, that might seem like the good old days, but unfortunately, you have to accept reality. And reality is that with the advent of the information age, the use of the internet in almost every home in America, there are cell phones and laptops and iPads and tablets and multiple video game consoles per home. There are so many things that are competing for your kids' attention. And frankly, as a working father and my wife as a working mother, we are both out of the house 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week during the summer, sometimes finding useful activities in the home or interesting things that our kids can watch that are age appropriate and inspiring, in some cases inspiring and very interesting. I don't know. I thought this podcast might be a lot of fun. I am not in any way endorsing that every kid in America sits at home all day long watching TV. I think that's a horrible waste of anyone's time. But I think if there's a TV show or two that's worth watching, I think this summer is a great opportunity to check those out. And it can help actually increase your kids' creativity and sense of adventurous spirit. I'm a big proponent of reading. I'm a big proponent of getting out and seeing the outdoors. I don't talk about the outdoors enough in this, but I have hiked in various places around the world. I have a love of the mountains. My kids love going to the beach. They love going to the mountains. I do not want to give off the impression that all myself and my kids do every weekend is sit around and watch TV. We don't. We have lives too. But when there's something interesting on TV that's worth your kids' time, I think, this podcast could help narrow down some of the decisions out there, because there are so many different streaming platforms and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of television shows out there. And so this podcast and the things I'm going to recommend are going to be completely different than anyone else's podcast of a similar subject to this. And so I'm just going to give you my unique take on this. And if anyone listening to this says, you missed so many other great shows, I have an Instagram account for this podcast. I have, there are ways to find me. There are ways to reach me. There are ways to message me directly. If I miss something, let me know, and I will probably plug it on the next episode of the Fixate Binge Podcast. Now, first things first, real quick, watching some great things on TV and even at the cinema. But the great thing is that Widow's Bay on Apple TV continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. It's fantastic. Just got done with the third episode, and what a banger. What a surprise that episode was. Now I can't wait to see every episode of this series. The other thing that I finished, finally, because I'm a completionist with certain things and certain television series, is the entire series finale of Amazon Prime's The Boys. Finally came to a screeching halt. I'm not a fan of the comic books. I don't read the comic books that it's based on. I hear that there's some divergences, some changes to certain characters, and of course the way they wrap things up at the end. But there has been, there's some fanboys out there, and I don't just mean, there's a community of diehards out there who are trying to suggest that the final season was disappointing and analogous or similar to the final season of Game of Thrones. They are wrong. It's not perfect. It's not the strongest season, but it's definitely not the final season of Game of Thrones. Come on. Talk about a false equivalency. The Boys, Eric Kripke's The Boys, was done very well. I thought the ending was satisfying. The way some of the characters' arcs tied up was also pretty good. I could have seen 2 or 3 more episodes, honestly. I think I would have wanted more spectacle in the finale. I think I would have wanted a larger, maybe a 2-part conclusion. You've had this show on for 5 seasons. Maybe have, Avengers Endgame, and then Infinity War, and then Endgame, like the last Harry Potter book. They split that into 2 movies. I think we should have got a full-length 2-episode conclusion. But that's me. Needless to say, I don't think it was a completely disappointing experience. And from now on, basically, I don't think Elon Musk is going to enjoy that finale, the way it ended. There was a nice callback to Elon Musk in the finale, and a very satisfying ending to some of the characters in there that had it coming and finally got theirs. And I won't give anything else away, so it was really, really satisfying on that front. I just came back from the cinema today with my wife and my kids. We watched the first showing on Saturday of The Mandalorian and Grogu, directed by Jon Favreau, who is responsible for the wonderful series The Mandalorian. The first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus were very good, very adventurous. Event family television, the same way I think Stranger Things is, and some of these other great television shows. And the 3rd season, it kind of dragged a little bit. And I heard, and maybe some diehards out there can confirm this for me, that there was some talk of a 4th season, but they ultimately scrapped it. And they used a lot of the ideas from the 4th season for this film, The Mandalorian and Grogu. And you know what? It was actually a pretty fun experience. It has cross appeal across multiple different ages. As a parent, I enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it. My son, my 22-year-old son, enjoyed it. My 17 turning 18-year-old daughter enjoyed it. My 11-year-old daughter turning 12 enjoyed it. So it is very hard to find entertainment that appeals to almost every demographic, every age range. And I felt that The Mandalorian and Grogu delivered on so many fronts. It was really, really good. But again, it's very insular as a story. We're used to seeing Star Wars writ large. These events by a couple characters have far-reaching consequences for the Rebel Alliance or for the Empire. They'll change the trajectory of the way of the Force or whatever. And Mandalorian and Grogu was not really that type of show. It was a show about basically it's a show about fathers and sons. I think you could make that case. A surrogate father and an orphan child, and the way they bond across their adventures in the galaxy. So this is like an adventure in cinematic form. I really enjoyed this. Is it the most important Star Wars film made? No, because again, it doesn't really affect things, nor was it trying to, in the larger Star Wars universe, right? There's no cameo of a Luke Skywalker, or no cameo of a major character that's going to change the events of the universe or the galaxy. It wasn't like that, nor was it trying to be. It never was. It was just a great show, almost like a space western, done really well. I enjoyed The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, I'm aware that there are a lot of naysayers, contrarians, people that they're not going to be happy with anything no matter what you throw at them. I'm just going to say something as a Gen Xer, and I know it's been said before. I think there's people who are better articulate than I am to put this out there, but let me just tell you something about me. One of my first memories of going to the movies as a kid, a little kid, was in 1977 to go see A New Hope, the first Star Wars film. We didn't talk about it being the first Star Wars film. We had no idea that there would ever be a sequel to this. As far as we knew, this was a standalone story in a galaxy far, far away about space wizards and mercenaries and evil sorcerers with lightsabers. That's what it was. And I got to tell you, it was one of the finest experiences I had as a little kid. Years later, of course, The Empire Strikes Back. Now we get a sequel, which is still relatively new. Sequels in the 80s really took off, but they weren't really a thing as much in the 70s. And so we're getting a sequel we get The Empire Strikes Back, and it's a fine sequel. It's wonderful. Now, from 1983, and as far as we knew, that was it. There was no more Star Wars. There was no Star Wars TV shows. There were some Star Wars specials. Oh, yes. There was the Star Wars special, the Star Wars Christmas special. And then there was a really cheesy, very 80s-esque, the Ewoks of Endor television special. Both of these are so bad. They were Mystery Science Theater 3000 level bad. I mean, they were really, really awful. They've aged very poorly. And it's so bad that it's good. It's like an Ed Wood film. These are terrible, terrible shows. But, you know, what could you do? You were trying to cash in on a billion-dollar toy franchise, which sprung out of nowhere. You know, they tied in the toys. These things were everywhere. I was playing Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, and we had lightsabers as little kids and jumping off things and acting like we had the Force. And, you know, I grew up in this world. And I don't know what I would have done if someone said, hey, guess what? There's going to be a TV show. It's going to come on every single week. And it's going to continue the story of some of these characters. Or it's going to be set within the Star Wars universe. It would have blown the top of my head off. That's how crazy I was about Star Wars and all things Star Wars. I was nuts about it. Absolutely crazy. So when I look at my kids' generation, the younger generation today, and they've got, you know, The Bad Batch, they've got the Clone Wars, they've got, you know, 3 new sequels, episode 1, The Phantom Menace, you know, you've got episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then episodes, you know, 7, 8, and 9, and The Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka, and Andor, and all of these, you know, and, you know, a Rogue One, all of these great Star Wars movies and shows and tie-ins and video games, you know, I mean, there's so many first-person video games where you can play these characters, and there's Lego sets and all of this stuff, and it's not enough. There's a community out there. They're still not happy. They're upset. They've designated themselves the gatekeepers of this. We can't have racial diversity amongst the cast. Nobody had a problem that Lando Calrissian pretty much ran Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back and is responsible for losing the Millennium Falcon in a card game to Han Solo. Nobody had a problem with that. Nobody had a problem with James Earl Jones, a black man, being the voice of Darth Vader. Nobody had a problem with that. But now we can't have diversity. We can't have different characters. We can't have different sexes, different races, different cultures, different creeds. We can't have that. It's all become wrapped up uncomfortably into identity politics, and it's just so stupid. You know, I just look at the generation today that get on the internet and have a podcast like I do and spout off their opinions. I just think, you know what, I would love to put you in a time machine, transport you back to when there was no internet. There was only about 5 channels on TV. And if you didn't find the remote, you had to get up and you had to actually turn the knob to get to those channels. And after a certain hour at night, just like in the movie Poltergeist, they would play the national anthem and then there would be popcorn screen, you know, at the end. That was TV in the early 80s for us. We were not spoiled with streaming shows, and you had to sit through the most insipid, stupid commercials. But even the commercials kind of stood with me, you know. I still remember, where's the beef from those Wendy's commercials? You know, and those Energizer Bunny commercials got to be very funny in the mid-'80s. But the point is that, you know, I think that we've spoiled this generation. We're spoiled. We are spoiled. We're absolutely spoiled because I'm older, but I'm not too old to forget how grateful I was to get just 3 movies. I mean, I would have made my whole life on that one movie, Star Wars: A New Hope, but then they came back for 2 more movies. Holy cow. So, you know, I just wanted to put that in perspective. Is The Mandalorian and Grogu a great Star Wars movie? It is. As a family, will your kids love it? I think they will. Does it entertain? It does. Is it adventurous? It is. Is it going to change the Star Wars universe? It won't. It's not trying to. Should you see it? Did you like The Mandalorian when it was on Disney Plus? as our family did. We loved it. I have little Grogu figurines in my house, little animatronic Grogu with little coos and ahs. We loved it. We loved it. And it was a great movie. And if it doesn't come back and they don't make a sequel, that's okay. And if they make a sequel, I'll be there for that too, because it was a great experience. So, sometimes we have to get out of our critical headspaces, our nitpickiness, our persnicketyness. We have to stop trying to be the two old theater critics sitting in the balcony in the Muppets about everything that comes down the pike from our beloved intellectual properties like Star Wars or Indiana Jones or whatever it may be. We've got to knock it off. So if you're aware of that out there, if that's part of what you're being exposed to, ignore the haters and just go have a good time. Is it worth the price of admission? It is. Go see it. I enjoyed it. I think you will enjoy it. If you have kids, they'll enjoy it. Now, speaking of kids, I'm a father. I have 3 kids. They sit in my house and they run my electricity bill up during the summer because we live in the Central Valley of California. It gets so hot here. It is so hot. It's not unusual to not have a drop of rain for a 4-month period. Literally desert-like conditions. Now, the Central Valley that I live in has been irrigated copiously because of the great snows in the Sierra Nevadas, which sit in the distance. The billions and billions of gallons of water have been irrigated and piped and pumped to flow into the Central Valley, so it's more vegetative. But without that, it would be a dust bowl. It would almost be a desert. And so sitting indoors is something that my family does do a lot. There is a lot of reading that happens in my family, but when there's television, I like to try and find things that my kids can enjoy together so they can have a mutual viewing experience. And so I started thinking about that. How many of you out there that are listening to this have kids who are going to be sitting at home during the summer? Do you want them just staring at YouTube shorts all day? Do you want them watching garbage on TikTok? Do you want them do you want that kind of brain rot? Why not get them hooked on a decent, addictive, but really engaging and fun television show? So I've got some suggestions I want to throw your way. Now, I've written these down, so I'm going to be reading from a list. So I just want to get to it. I'll tell you where these shows are, and I'll tell you where you can stream them. So right off the bat, you're going to want to have, if you don't already, and by the way, if you don't have these streaming options, don't sweat it, okay? You do you. But if you're looking to spend maybe an extra $10 or $12 a month to give your kids a wider variety of viewing options for the summer, this would be the time to do it. And then just cancel it when the kids go back to school. Cancel it. But anyway, Disney Plus, I think, is a no-brainer. Disney Plus, there are so many options there. Now, Disney owns Hulu, so there are some shows that are on Hulu that are not necessarily Disney-esque, but you can access the Hulu shows through the Disney Plus app, if that makes sense. So Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, like I said, and FX, which is, that's also owned by Disney. And then Amazon Prime, right? And the other one, and I'm going to try and find it here, is Peacock. So Peacock or Paramount Plus. Those are some other great streaming options if you've got kids and you need to give them a wider variety of things that they can consider. All right, so let me just jump into this. There is no list of one show over another, but I'm going to give you a few options. Now, if you've got younger teens, and I'm talking like ages 10 to 13, preteens in that awkward phase where they're going to be teenagers, but they're preteens, I think there's some great shows here that give some wonderful options. So, for example, Gravity Falls, a funny cartoon. I'm sure you've heard of it. You can find that on Disney Plus. It's got a little bit of intrigue and adventure. It's a bit macabre. It's strange. It's not tailor-made for little kids. It has some elevated humor. It's pretty good. I think your kids will enjoy it, especially if they're in that 10 to 13-year-old age range. The other thing is Lock and Key. I'm not going to go into what these shows are about, but Lock and Key has a lot of adventure to it. And it's, again, it's designed really. It's serialized, so it's every episode builds upon the previous episode. So it's not like a standalone series. Every episode builds, and so that's on Netflix, and it's an adventure fantasy show. Lost in Space. This is the remake of the famous Lost in Space television show, but this one's got great production values. This has got Toby Stevens, someone I know, someone I had a lunch with. He plays the dad. This is the same Lost in Space with that famous soundbite, "Danger, Will Robinson, danger." So there's that one. Sweet Tooth is also on Netflix, as is Lost in Space. Sweet Tooth is great. It's caught a couple seasons. The series is completely done. All the seasons are available to watch on Netflix now. And that is a dystopian, coming-of-age, fantasy, heartwarming, apocalyptic type show. Very clever, very well done, and I think your kids will love it. The other thing that I think will help their creativity, because we don't have enough shows like this, is, and I couldn't help but think this because I watch it as an adult, and I'm engrossed in it, and that is Lego Masters. There are 5 seasons on Hulu, which you could get, of course, through Disney+. 5 seasons of Lego Masters. The host of the show, of the American version, is Will Arnett, who played the voice of Lego Batman, and of course he's from Arrested Development and so many other great shows. He's got that distinctive Batman voice, but he is the host of this show where contestants come on, they're given a challenge, they're given a set amount of time to build a specific design with as many Legos as they can in the amount of time they're given, and then they're judged. And it's so clever, it's so fun, and if you have Legos in the house, your kids, especially your preteens, may really just, it might really just fire some of their creative cylinders in their head, if that makes sense. The other show I think that's just a lot of fun is the live action One Piece. There's 2 seasons now available for it, also on Netflix, which I think is highly enjoyable. There are some themes, some content. It's a bit violent, can be a little bit brutal. So it's closer to PG-13 than PG, if that makes sense, if we're using the movie rating as a gauge. And of course, I have to say it, The Simpsons. All 36, 37, 38 seasons of The Simpsons are available on Disney+. You can get those through your Disney Plus account. You can also access it through Hulu. If you ask me, it never got better than season 10 of The Simpsons. I mean, there's some good episodes here and there throughout, of course, but seasons 3 through seasons 10, that's genius, apex level, The Simpsons. It just didn't get better from that. So, and there's so much to watch, which is a real feast. You could spend all summer trying to watch every episode from every season and you still wouldn't finish. I just don't think you would. And then I would wonder if you need a life. You'd probably need a life by then. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about, and those are just the shows that I could think of off the top of my head for ages 10 to 13. And some of those shows have cross appeal. I'm not saying that, you can't enjoy these shows depending on the age of your kids, because I don't know. And when it comes to Legos, I'm still a kid. I'm still a kid at heart. But I have never heard of an age. I've never heard of an age range of anyone that doesn't like Legos. Like Legos appeals to this demographic, this age range, and then it skips this age range, and then it becomes interesting again to a later age. I think Legos is a lifelong, universally enjoyable activity. So, even though I might not include Lego Masters for this next list of things that they can watch for older teens or older kids, by all means, please watch Lego Masters. It's such fun. Okay, so this is a little bit for older. This is 13 to 17, especially if you have daughters. It depends. I mean, some of these are girl specific. Not necessarily have to be a girl to enjoy them, but they might appeal more to girls. No, I'm not going to be talking about Euphoria on HBO. I'm trying very hard to leave the smut and the adult content out of any of these recommendations. In fact, if nothing else, you as a parent, after listening to these, might be thankful, thinking, I've got to give my kids something else that they can watch so that they don't fall into this curiosity trap of let's watch this garbage on HBO. So I'm trying to give you some alternatives. So hopefully this helps. Now, there is a show where the language is pretty heavy. But it's funny. It's very funny. It's otherwise very safe, but the language is very, very, it's very blue, but that's the way it is in Ireland. I had a neighbor in England from Ireland And I listened to him lose his temper. He lost his temper once with a guy that was soliciting and blocked his driveway. And I wish I could have recorded it. It was the most interesting torrent and creative use of the F word I have ever heard. And the only thing I could think of is that's so Irish. He's so Irish. And I'm not trying to stereotype the entire culture, the entire Irish culture, but it was just it was amusing, it was entertaining, terrifying, very interesting. Again, I wish I would have recorded it. It was it was art. It was absolute art. It also helps that the next door neighbor, who was Irish, is a screenwriter. He was a screenwriter, so he was a creative. He had a command of the language, as it were, almost a James Joycean command of the language, if you know what I mean. But anyway, this show is on Netflix. It's called Dairy Girls, and it takes place in the, oh gosh, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, and this is about a group of friends growing up in a Catholic school at a turning point in their lives, and it is just so funny. The first episode might be the funniest debut for a TV show I have ever seen. It is so rich, it's so great. I watched the show and then I turned around and watched it with my 17-year-old daughter. We could not stop laughing. It was just so good. So if you have an older kid, 15 to 17, that age range, they may really connect with Dairy Girls, especially if they're a girl. Now, the other show I really enjoyed, and again, the language is salty, okay, but the themes are very adolescent and older, not in a Euphoria type way, but is on Hulu, Reservation Dogs. All the seasons are there. That is a story about, I mean, it's largely made by Indigenous people. The cast is Indigenous, the writers are Indigenous, the producers are Indigenous. This is a story about some kids growing up, high schoolers, growing up on a reservation and trying to escape the reservation, trying to have hope of life beyond the reservation, and trying to find their place in the world, and having dreams, and they're mourning the loss of a very close friend of theirs that died before the show begins. And so this show, it blends mysticism and it blends adolescence, and it's so much, there's a lot of humor to it, and it's so genuine and very funny. And I really enjoyed Reservation Dogs. But again, the language is very salty. So be careful, okay? Again, if you're a 15 to 17-year-old, I don't think the language is going to bother you, but it depends on your household, what you allow to have in your household. The other show, I think, which is a great coming-of-age story, is a little bit from a while back. This was in the 90s. It's Freaks and Geeks. That has a huge cult following. You'll see a young Seth Rogen. You'll see a young James Franco before he got canceled. You'll see wonderful characters throughout this show. Great stories. This is about kids growing up in the 90s. It's about adolescence and about accepting responsibility and growing up in a changing world. It's very interesting. I related to it because that was the world I grew up in. That was the time frame that I was living through. And you can catch Freaks and Geeks on Hulu or Paramount Plus. So either way is fine. The other show, which is also very good for teenagers, is Wednesday Addams from the Addams Family. You know, Jenna Ortega, this is her big breakout role, and it's got 2 seasons up. The first season was really good. I haven't heard as much about the second season being as nearly as good as the first season. But if you're hooked and you want to just continue the story and follow some of these characters, season 2 is out there. I think your kids will enjoy that as well. And again, all those episodes are available now on Netflix. The other show on Netflix is Shadow and Bone, which is an adventure type, a little bit like His Dark Materials, a little bit like Harry Potter, a little strange, a little fantastical. Takes place in kind of a mythical fantasy future, a little bit steampunk in terms of its style and the way it looks. But I think your kids will enjoy that as well, especially your older kids. And that, again, is on Netflix. And another show is La Brea, which is kind of a disaster adventure television show that takes place in modern times about the La Brea tar pits and things that are coming out of the La Brea tar pits, which are also very interesting. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of coming of age storytelling in those shows for the older kids. There's humor and emotional honesty that permeates throughout each of those shows. Fantasy escapism, the types of things that take your kids out of the doldrums of a lazy, Monday afternoon sitting at home. And teen identity and social pressure is definitely a heavy theme, especially in Dairy Girls, especially in Freaks and Geeks. It's a heavy theme throughout. Now, the other show I have to recommend, I think it's good for any age of your kids at home, is Malcolm in the Middle. Now, they revived that for a single season. They caught up with all the characters almost 20 years after the fact. But all the seasons of Malcolm in the Middle are available through Hulu, of course, through Disney Plus. And that is just hilarious all the way through. This, of course, is before Bryan Cranston became a television legend for playing Walter White. Before that, he played Malcolm in the Middle's dad, Hal. And I will say this: we've had podcasts about Malcolm in the Middle before with my former co-host, and I'll tell you, I think the marriage between Bryan Cranston and Jane Kasmerick, who plays the wife, the mom, Lois, is the most successful and loving marriage in television history. Go on. I throw the gauntlet down. Can you name me a better marriage? Through thick and thin. Through thick and thin. And you could probably say Roseanne. You could say The Cosby Show. I hope you don't say The Cosby Show. You could say Ozzie and Harriet. You could say The Lucy Show. I Love Lucy. The Honeymooners. Hopefully not. But you could give me multiple examples of Little House on the Prairie. That's strong. That's competitive. But I think the marriage between Hal and Lois and Malcolm in the Middle, raising those 4 boys, eventually 5 boys, is one of the most successful and loving marriages in television history ever presented. There, I said it. So there are some pretty good values there too. Now, here's a show that Ryan Coogler, who did Sinners, and of course he did Fruitvale Station, and he did the Black Panther movies. But Ryan Coogler seems like he's got a Jordan Peele streak. He has been trying to bring, and it looks like it's happening, he's been trying to reboot the X-Files television series. Now, the X-Files was one of the most original and captivating sci-fi television shows in the 90s. And I really believe that the success of David Lynch's Twin Peaks is what engendered wonderful shows like The X-Files and other things. But The X-Files, let's go back to just The X-Files, because Ryan Coogler is going to reboot it, and there's some talk of some of the original stars from the original X-Files television show possibly reprising their characters or cameoing in the Ryan Coogler one. So that's off in the distance. That's in the distance. But for now, we have about 9 seasons, over 200 episodes, for better or worse, of the X-Files. Now, this is why I'm pushing the X-Files and why I think you should check it out, despite the fact that it started airing like 30 odd years ago. And that's because, in case you haven't been paying attention, our president has been trying to distract the world from paying attention to the Epstein files with an Iran war. That's not going well. So he's trying to distract between the Epstein files and the Iran war and inflation and the high prices of gas and everything else. And he keeps releasing, which is kind of wild, previously classified footage from the Pentagon and from Central Intelligence of unexplained phenomena, unexplained aerial phenomena, UAPs, UFOs, footage for the last 50 years that the Pentagon or the Air Force or some sort of the NSA, the National Security Agency, they have footage from fighter pilots. They have apparently thousands and thousands of hours of footage of unexplained things, objects zipping through the air. And so when you're watching the X-Files, and of course the X-Files it's not just about aliens, but it's about unexplained phenomena. It's about mystery, unsolved cases with paranormal themes to them. But one of the running threads throughout all 9 seasons of the X-Files is, are we alone in the universe? And are aliens and UFOs real? And so because of what's going on now, because of what our government is releasing now, for whatever reason they're releasing it, this might scratch an itch for your kids. It really might, because it's definitely in the public discourse. Almost every day there's something in the news about aliens, or the government releases a fresh tranche of files about unexplained close encounters of the third kind, or whatever it may be. I keep seeing stuff like this on social media. And it's getting to a point now where you can almost not tell the difference between AI generated stuff and the real thing. But nevertheless, it's being released. And because it's being released, there might be a real interest in the original X-Files with Fox Mulder by Dana Duchovny and Scully, Dana Scully. I can't believe this. I'm showing my age. Dana Scully by Gillian Anderson, who the two of them were relative unknowns. Dana Duchovny had a small part on Twin Peaks in the second season. But this show made them front page, made them pretty much international stars. It made them household names. And the show went on for 9 seasons. It spawned 2 or 3 different movies that they've made it. They ended up coming back about 5 years ago, and they made a single season, which you can now catch on Hulu. So, my father worked for NASA for 17 years. He has a lot of beliefs about the existence of life outside of our galaxy or solar system. I won't get into that, but he's convinced we're not alone. And given the evidence that we're seeing released almost on a daily basis by our own government, it would appear that there's evidence that we're not. So it's all very interesting. Now, X-Files leans in very heavily to this. And I think your kids are going to love it. I think even every age range is going to love it, from ages 10 to 17, or even if you've got somebody, from college who's home for the summer and doesn't have a job and isn't cleaning your house while you're off working. I think the X-Files is a great show for your kids to sit down and bond together and watch. Or if you don't have kids, you have only a kid, it's a great show to get into, which I could not endorse more than this. I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, I snapped my ankle. I was home for 6 weeks in a cast. I had to keep it elevated. This was a terrible time in my life. I put on weight, of course, because I couldn't get up and move around much. And I decided I would binge all the episodes of the X-Files. And I did it in 6 weeks. And I was, oh my gosh, my brain was almost mush by then. So I do not recommend that your kids binge all 9 seasons of the X-Files this summer. But I think the show is highly engaging, and for what it's worth, it's going to come back. It's being rebooted by Ryan Coogler, and it's going to have, a budget with special effects. Some of the special effects in TV shows today rival what we're seeing in the movies, okay? I certainly felt that way about the Mandalorian and Grogu today. There were certain things in the movie that I'm like, there were episodes where I thought that was a movie budget for that episode. And so I think you're going to enjoy that. And if anything else, Ryan Coogler, when it comes to being a storyteller and directing and producing things, he always tells a compelling and interesting, fascinating story. I know that from watching his other films, especially Sinners, which is one of my favorite films last year. So I'm sure his X-Files is going to be great, and what an opportunity for your kids to get caught up if they plan on watching the new X-Files when it comes out. Either it comes out at the end of this year or early 2027. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, those are the shows that I think your kids could use up some time during the day to watch this summer when it's too boiling hot, or if you live in a neighborhood where going outside is a risk for their health and safety, you might feel more relieved if they're just indoors with the shades drawn and the doors locked, putting on a good show to occupy some of their time. It's going to appeal to them, whether it's through good values or creativity, or just being interested in science, or building, or identity, or a cultural identity. Any of these things, I think the shows that I recommended are a great starting point for you on that. And I'm going to end this podcast now, and I'm doubtless going to get off this and think about a dozen other shows I should have mentioned during this podcast. I'm not going to. So I apologize in advance. But again, if you're listening to this and you can think of shows that you're thinking, why the heck didn't he mention that show? I kept thinking he would mention it. I probably have seen it and I just didn't think of it. So message me on Instagram. Let me know what it is. And if it's a huge oversight on my part, I will plug it on the next episode of the Fixate Binge podcast. In any case, have a great week. We'll see you next week. I think we'll be in June by then for next week. And we'll be in the full throes of summertime. Take it easy out there. There's some wonderful things coming to the cinema. I can't wait. I really can't wait. Although I'm not quite sure if I'm going to see He-Man or not. A little bit on the fence on that one. Not quite sure. But anyway, I've got some exciting guests coming up. Some interesting features coming to the Fixate Binge podcast. Until then, I want you guys to take care of yourselves. Look after yourselves. And watch out for each other. Watch out for each other. Be there for each other. So with that in mind, have a good one. See you later. Bye-bye.